Maybe in 1 minute we will start. Hello, everyone. Just to let you know, we have interpretation, English, Russian, для наших подписчиков, для наших слушателей сегодня у нас есть перевод на русский язык. Внизу, если нажмете, вот также будет запись вестись нашей сегодняшней сессии. So welcome to our 10th anniversary Life in Kyrgyzstan conference online version. This is, in fact, our first day of the conference. And I'm very happy to welcome you all here. And let me give the floor to our moderator today, Irène Mestre. So the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, I'm really glad to open this session on environmental change in Central Asia. As Saule already mentioned, my name is Irène Mestre. I'm a geographer and I'm currently working as a researcher at the French Institute of Central Asian Studies in Bishkek, and I will be the chair of this session. Research on the environment is not new in the region. Some of you may remember the extensive research carried out since the Tsarist Empire on the agricultural potential of the region, its water resources, forests, etc. However, the intensity and the rapidity of climate change, combined with the growing inequalities in the Central Asian countries, forces research to adopt new perspectives. These dynamics bring questions of multidisciplinarity, integration of biophysical and human processes, creation of new indicators and models, but more importantly, it raises the question of justice. Tonight, we will start with Yumi Toboé, a geographer from the Sorbonne University, who will share some insights from her research on the circularity of waste and its transformation into a resource based on the case of plastic recycling in Bishkek. We will then listen to Asel Murzakulova from the University of Central Asia and myself for a short part on the results of a systematic literature review on agrarian change, environmental change, and migrations in Tajikistan. Our third presentation by Anastasia Protassov, a geographer from Lille University, will examine the limits and perspectives of so-called environmental peacebuilding implemented by development organizations in the Fergana Valley. Finally, I will invite the presentators and our audience to a virtual roundtable to answer the different questions which will certainly arise, but also to offer some space for two questions which connect the research presented. First is how we can move toward a better integration of research and development work. And the second is what issues do you face regarding data collection and or monitoring, and how do you overcome them? Please feel free to ask your questions in any language you are better comfortable in. Russian, certainly someone can help with Kyrgyz, English, or French if I can help. Please, Yumi, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation and for inviting me for this panel. Just to know how many time I have to present. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes would be great.
Okay. Can I share some diapositives?
On the bottom of your...
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. I think it's working. It is? So can you see my presentation?
Yes, now it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So yes, I would like to present my research, the research I've made for my master's degree when I was in Sorbonne University. So I've been more or less 4 or 5 months during spring 2023, mainly in Bishkek, Karakol, Osh, or Jalalabad. I have to thank the French Institute of Central Asia Study who support me for this research. So today, recycling is often linked to ecology and protection of environment, especially in plastic recycling. As we can see in this advertising, recycled plastics save nature. And in a territory like Bishkek, which is a really big city with new industries and new way of waste management, it's very interesting to question that. So I wanted to ask what are the materiality of the plastic recycling system in Bishkek. It haven't been studied before in this particular geographical and anthropological way. And the second question I had was how the plastic recycling representations are filling the industrial system of this sector, because the plastic recycling is linking very different representation of ecology and protection of environment with an industrial system, actually. So what surprised me the first was the spread of public and private cans in the Bishkek streets in front of public infrastructures like schools or universities, or just in front of private spaces like hostels or magazines or shops, sorry. And so it's a proof, in a first proof that plastic and more recyclables are kind of resources which interest a lot of people. And the first was effectively Tazalik, which is the municipal company for plastic collection, for waste collection, but they are developing new separated bins for recyclables. And there is also an alternative, or we can say informal, but I won't create a debate about informal. But there is other kind of alternative collection of recyclables. Some people that we can see in the streets who are collecting with a dump truck without engine or with a bicycle or trucks. And the people who are in trucks generally are less visible in public spaces. But usually there's materials collected in Bishkek streets and more broader in all the agglomerations, sold directly to wholesalers. And these wholesalers can be also in the outskirts of the city, but also in near the habitations of Bishkek. These wholesalers are rebuying the different kind of recyclable that there are in the city, and they are gathering together and sorted by type of materials like paper, paperboard, metal, aluminum, which is cans, plastic bottles, and they separate it from of different qualities of plastic, for example, clear and blue or brown and green, because the price will be different. So this is an example of the price of the different materials by type of materials. And after that, industrial companies usually goes to the wholesaler's place to rebuy the materials that they need. Um, I won't detail all the recycling process, but for the plastics, the most of them are melting and pelletizing plastic, and pelletizing means reform the plastic into little pieces, as we can see on the right. And this industry actually are just reproducing all the kind of plastic object, like plastic bags, actually, mainly plastic bags, are really common everyday objects. And so there is a lot of really new industries in Bishkek who are processing this recycled plastic, but the main industries are actually export it to Kazakhstan, Russia, or Uzbekistan. So they have a lot of new collection strategy for plastic bottle, especially. Like these bins with the shape of a bottle. And this is quite new. I'm sure that you saw them in the Bishkek streets. It creates new plastic deposits separate from the different wastes. So the plastic flow created is not picked up by competitors and with a better quality. So it's a very good point for these industrial companies to spread all of these bins in the city. But in the same times, it involves the consumer in this industrial strategy to collect plastic bottles, and it's kind of it teaches us to participate collectively in this action. There is also different players. For example, Ecopozol is an association in Osh, and they are like a wholesaler. Actually, they are collecting, more receiving materials from the inhabitants of Osh, but without any financial contributions. So all is built on the feeling of participating in ecology. Tazar is also a service of door-to-door collection, and there is no financial contribution in any kind, but there is like winning. We can win some points to have gifts, for example. So the people who are creating this kind of new industries in a broader sense are mainly young people and educated, and they have a strong feeling of being involved in ecology. And all is condensed in this sentence told by a manager of one of this industry. We want to make money, but we want to do this for ecology, which is quite interesting. And maybe it's a cultural change of plastic collection and plastic recycling industry more broader. In any case, there is so different kind of other players as international, like US said, who give grants, for example, for this extrusion machine, or UNDP for different kind of grants. And Tazar received grants, for example, to develop his app. And there is also regional organizations like WasteNet, which is specifically for Kyrgyzstan, but there is also PlastNet for Kazakhstan. And I want to just focus on it. So WasteNet is a very important player in the development of this plastic recycling sector, as they create links between plastic processors, recycled plastic processors, and hostel, for example, or also restaurants and yeah, mainly with the hostel and restaurants, and also bank system. And they have been created by CSR Central Asia, which is consultants for companies, and Coca-Cola Foundation that that you probably know. The WasteNet company, the WasteNet, sorry, the WasteNet network. Actually, it's a network. So really spreading this Coca-Cola Foundation, Coca-Cola company's policy about a world without waste, and bringing all of this new recycling sector in this cultural changement. We can, for example, present the labels that they have created for this with the best practices for recycling, like in the picture with all the hostel and big hostel of Bishkek and restaurants also. So it was just a very short overview of what is actually the new plastic collection and recycling system in Bishkek, which is one of them, but the main, for instance, and how the Coca-Cola Foundation and Coca-Cola Company, more broadly, setting the standards of the technical, legal, and cultural framework for the recycling industrial sector in Bishkek and maybe in Kyrgyzstan, I would say, and mainly by greening this sector. So I didn't present all the detail of my research, but it was the main point of my research.
Thank you, Yumi. That was really interesting. I'm sure that will echo with many of the concerns of our guests and colleagues today. Asel, can you share your screen? Perfect. Thank you. Your mic is off.
Now it's working. Yeah.
Yeah, but the presentation, at least on my side, it doesn't appear as a presentation. We just see your screen. And now we kind of have both. So the screen and then the next slide too.
Okay, sure. Let me try again. So while I'm doing this, just several words how we came to idea of this research. We with Irène is, if I may say, all co-authors. So we have very close research interests, and one day we just communicated and think how we actually designed our research, and what we can do very new in this regard, because as all of us working in some specific projects, this could be doctoral projects, some specific research project, etc. We haven't too much time to kind of design research which we want to do. And invest time for this. So, and from one of these kind of conversations, we came to conclusion that it will be very interesting to see how knowledge production in Central Asia occurring in different languages, and what this perspective could give us in terms of understanding the major research gaps and navigate the future research agenda. From such kind of discussions, we came to this research, which we together will present today. It's focused on environmental change, agrarian dynamics, and migration in Tajikistan based on systematical critical literature review method. As I mentioned, this research wasn't supported by any projects or any kind of specific research or funding schemes. So it's really our interest to see this biographical patterns from how this knowledge about the environmental change, agrarian change, and migration constructed in different languages. So then we came to, then we formulated our research objectives. It's to provide state-of-art of research conducted on these 3 pillars, and to address the interactions by reviewing existing literature. And we navigated our research by 3 following questions: how to adapt the literature review methodology, because as we know, the major literature review papers, which we also considered, based only 1 language database. So we was curious how adapt this methodology in a field with asymmetric knowledge production. By asymmetric, we mean that in different languages, we have different amount of knowledge production based on these 3 topics. Of course, in English, we have the most productive kind of knowledge landscape on these 3 thematics. In Russian, it's also quite dynamic because it is a language of regional academia. And in French, we found not too much knowledge production, but still it was very interesting to compare. And the second language, or second question, it's how, what are the main research topics and areas of scholarly interest about Tajikistan in relation with our 3 focus, and where knowledge gaps and where research agenda could be developed further. We applied Prisma approach and also PSALSAR. Here you can see the research steps and how our research protocol was developed. So you can see that for final analysis, our database consists from following data sets. In Russian, we analyzed 44 resources, for environmental change. In English, 30, in French, no. Research was selected for further analysis. On migration pillar, it was 27 English, 111 in Russian, and 4 in French. And agrarian change pillar considered 9 research publications in English, 14 in Russian, and none in French. Let me pass to Irène for environmental change in Tajikistan pillar analysis.
Thank you, Asel. So the main question that we had was how research can actually create links between environmental change, agrarian change, and migration, knowing that these dynamics are highly connected in such a country as Tajikistan. So regarding environmental change, we tried to elaborate 3 main questions. So, which data can deepen the knowledge of existing dynamics related to global change? By global change, we understand climate change, but also all the other changes which are created by the human processes. So that can be also related to biodiversity, contamination, and everything. The second question was about the main vulnerabilities and perspectives to anticipate and adapt to major shifts. And the third one was to reflect on the power relations and their interactions with climate change. Our main results show that most research is actually focusing on data collection, monitoring, and scenario elaboration for climate change understanding. The second big block of research, of literature, is about diagnosis and assessment for vulnerability and adaptation capacities, with a very small, let's say, discrete and timid research growing on the contribution of Tajikistan as a country to the decrease of greenhouse emissions. So that was interesting to see also that Tajikistan is not only a, let's say, a victim of climate change, but it also now so that research is also looking at Tajikistan as a stakeholder in this dynamic. And the third one was about the analysis of the mutual effects between climate change and power relations. And for instance, how it can affect the way different social groups interact and how they can create maybe a more equal society. Quite interestingly, we saw that the focus was mostly on food security as a topic and on cultivated crops. And so that brings us to the gaps that we identified. So first, qualitative research is rather scarce, and it's mostly concentrated in the Pamir region, where lots of case studies are carried out. And it also shows that we have an uneven regional coverage of the country. Some regions, some oblasts of Tajikistan are really, I would say, heavily researched, while others are very rarely found in the literature. So Pamir, Gebeao, and also the region around Dushanbe, they are the mostly researched areas, and the rest is, let's say, much less researched. And it was interesting to see that research is very often conducted on very specific topic, very specific phenomenon, or on very general, very broad approach. But the question on the interaction between biophysical processes in general, so water cycle, I don't know, soil fertility, even climate models, and human activities at system level are mostly absent from the literature. Thank you.
Yeah, and now we're moving to the multidimensional dynamics of migration in Tajikistan. And as we all us know, Tajikistan is one of the most remittance-dependent country globally, and contribution of migrant remittances to improving livelihood, poverty reduction, supporting agriculture, etc., enormous. So it is a very important social and economical dynamic in country. So, and as we could expect, literature speak a lot about migration, but what we found that in for example, Russian language literature, it is very focused very broad to migration dynamics, and mostly major focus goes what happened with migrants in Russia rather than what happened with migrants in Tajikistan. So in this regard, I think migration studies in Russia, of course, it is some exceptions also exist. For example, Dr. Kasymova us work about gender dynamics in migrant families, or access or how the access to smartphones change gender dynamics in migrant families. So of course we have some exceptions, but now I'm talking about the, let's say, average kind of narratives in these papers. We also can see that most of the papers hasn't very limited in using household survey data. And what we can see, it is most kind of statistically based data, or I mean data taken from National Statistics Committee, or data from very kind of small ethnographical studies. So in this regard, we can see that clear gap in data availability and regarding the migration literature in Russian language. Then we can see that it is applicable for all language literature, real gap in health migration nexus. It is not rely only to Tajikistani migration studies literature. I think it's wider for Central Asia. We have some publications which focused on AID spread and tuberculosis, but all the studies was support via big development kind of fundings, so no kind of academic interest on this. Then regarding migration aspirations, it's both literature, specifically Russian-speaking literature, speak only about, through economic determinism, that people migrate from Tajikistan only because of poverty. If we consider this the discussion in much broader regional perspective, we can see that migrations in Central Asia now are more moving beyond this economic determinism. And for example, last publication specifically on Tajikistan by Elena Borisova show that people has more social oriented kind of social responsibility kind of oriented scenarios compare with poorly money-based motifs, yeah, or push-pull factors, beyond push-pull factors. Then we almost didn't find research in all languages which will analyze migration and demographic dynamics, or migration or analyze migration flow through stratification of this flow on not only gendered approach, but also via age range, etc. So it's still not unclear. Everybody talk about male-dominated migration, but it didn't give us anything about understanding the specificities and specificities regarding the spatial dimension of migration. It is also echo what Irène mentioned about environmental change pillar in migration literature. We also can see the spatial bias when most of research talking about, but this spatial bias in different regard, it's mostly talking about whole country without giving any specificity, or give some cases, for example, so from Sukt region or from Dushanbe and surrounding, but it's very rare. Most of specifically Russian-speaking literature speak about Tajikistan and Tajikistani migration processes as a whole, without giving any specifics. Why is this important? Because Tajikistan is a mountain country, and as we know from global studies, the migration patterns and immobility patterns in mountain countries very differ from the flat areas, let's say like this. Um, and of course, people from Tajikistan migrate not only to Russia, but all migration studies focus it poorly on this direction. Of course, it is majority, more than 95% of Tajikistani migrants go to Russia. But as it was shown, for example, in Kyrgyzstani research on migration, these patterns could change over the time, and migration to Russia could be the step for migrants to migrate further to Eastern Europe or to South Korea, etc. So this link wasn't clear sound in our literature, and it is a real good prospect for future studies. Let me shift to next pillar. It's agrarian debate, an agrarian change debate in Tajikistan. As we all know, Central Asia still little sounded in post-socialist agrarian change debate, and we was curious what kind of new and not only new, what kind of dynamics in knowledge production on this direction. And we found that, for example, in English language literature, the major focus on political economy of agrarian change, who won, who lost, and a lot of research focused on depths and how this not a lot, actually only one author working on this, it's Irina Hoffman, and but it's also mirror some research in Russian language, where there also depth which was created during transition from one form of farm organization to other form of farm organization, play a role as a power mechanisms of state under the farmers. So it is a very good contribution which we found in English language literature regarding current post-socialist dynamic of agrarian change. We also found that Russian language and English language studies mostly focused on Pamir, Hatlon, and Sukt. We also found that in the publication which was published after 2015, some cluster approach became more and more popular, let's say, and it is only it's only a pillar from 3 under consideration, which try to build the links with other dynamics. For example, with migration impact via labor shortage and gendered agricultural labor dynamics. And with economical problems like lack of subsidies, etc. So it's very kind of research which serve as a mediator between different research agendas, which not happened in previous two research pillars. So our key findings, which refer to all 3 pillars under considerations, it's a limited data sets. Today we have the first session under the Life in Kyrgyzstan conference, which one of the first, I think, and only knowledge infrastructure in Central Asia. So, and it's also affect knowledge production regarding Kyrgyzstan. But unfortunately, in Tajikistan, we have limited household survey data which are available to scholars. Other kind of data sets in open access. So it's also affect knowledge production about Tajikistan. The second, we found that despite of the huge impact of labor migration on Tajikistani economy, we still knowledge production and migration studies not answered to the question how this process affects social stratification, the classical question, yeah, but we don't know. So I think it's an important prospect for future studies. Then, as I mentioned, agrarian debate, agrarian transition, transformations, studies, it's there. LiK kind of LiK studies which refer to all dynamics in migration and environmental change, which linking all these three pillars. And then we have still very limited pool of methodological approaches. I think sometimes it's referred to the data limitation, access to the field, etc. So we have very good anthropological studies, but meso level studies and macro level studies still not very well represented, and probably it is also a good field for future research. Thank you very much. I'm stopping here. Irène, if you want to add something.
Thank you, Asel. I think it was, it gave lots of results, so I won't go further. Thank you, Asel. And Anastasia, I'm not sure if you can share your screen.
Yeah, I will stop my screening. Just a minute.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, thanks for your presentation, and thank you for inviting me to this conference. I'm quite happy to be here. I hope you can all see my screen. Let me just put it. Is it all good?
Yes,
Yes.
it is. It's perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, thank you for the presentation, for inviting me today. My name's Anastasia. I'm a PhD student in geography at the University of Lille in France. And today I'm here to talk to you about environmental peacebuilding in the Fergana Valley. So in this continuation of a panel on climate change in Central Asia. And this is based on the results of an article that I wrote approximately a few months ago, and that is currently under review. So maybe to give you a little bit of context, as you all may know, the Fergana Valley is a region that is shared between Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. And it has been perceived and presented in the Western literature and conception of the world as one of the most unstable areas in Central Asia, since the fall of the USSR especially. What we have to keep in mind is that the valley experienced some ethnic and border conflicts, but now it is also characterized by competition for the distribution and access to natural resources. So over time, the tensions that were particularly among communities, especially between Batken in Kyrgyzstan and Sukht in Tajikistan, they have become entangled and amplified by nationalistic propaganda and also disinformation that has been disseminated through social media channels. So the cyclic confrontations spanning years, they have progressively escalated to the national sphere, and violence culminated in September 2022. What we should also keep in mind when talking about conflict because of natural resources is the impact of climate change. So climate change and its effects, they weigh heavily on the valley, in the way that the increase in temperatures primarily affects the evaporation of water, but also the melting of glaciers that irrigate the valley. So if water scarcity can become a real threat in the next years, it's specifically the change in availability that jeopardizes the current status quo between European states. We have to, in this way, we can say that climate change is not the cause of conflict, but is a threat multiplier in this context. And all these conflicts that take their source not only in natural resources disputes, but also in many, many other factors, they are also exacerbated by hostile rhetoric and increasing ethnicization of conflicting parties. So, in other words, it is important to note that water is not a natural cause for conflict in the Fergana Valley, but rather it's the interplay between natural resources and the political situation that creates tensions. So in the valley, to address all these conflicts that we have had, international organizations and NGOs have been implementing peacebuilding initiatives. So the term peacebuilding was first introduced in 1976 and refers to a variety of initiatives that contribute to sustainable peace by transforming relationships between former conflicting parties into cooperation partners. So humanitarian assistance, especially in peacebuilding, has been organized in several ways, especially in the Fergana Valley. So major NGOs began their activities in the early 1990s, so even before the independence. And the second phase reached its peak in the Fergana Valley, particularly in 2005 and 2010, for obvious reasons. And we have to keep in mind that these interventions were primarily focused on emergency response and the way that they were addressing the immediate needs of populations affected by conflicts. And this approach followed a really top-down approach, guided also by Western ideas of liberalism, democracy, and market economy. But what we can see from the literature is that this highly centralized top-down approach, it showed quite limited results and low return on investment on the long term. Some authors even go further by stating that this excessive use of top-down approach has inadvertently supported the strengthening of authoritarianism in the region. And that's why we had a shift towards a more of a bottom-up approach in the Fergana Valley, which resulted in grassroots peace-building initiatives. And so these initiatives, they aim to provide a platform for local stakeholders to engage in discussion and enabling them also to address their differences. But in order to be successful, these bottom-up approaches that emerge from communities, they must be recognized and supported by national level actors through capacity building initiatives. So in terms of methodology, I had a multidisciplinary approach in the way that I had the chance to gather some information by doing some literature review in different lenses in geography, political sciences, and development. I also had the chance to conduct some semi-structured interview, especially with NGO representatives, also local central NGOs, etc. And while doing also some field work in Central Asia and the Fergana Valley. And the main question of my article was to assess and understand to what extent is environmental peacebuilding applicable to the context of the Fergana Valley. So the context of environmental building as itself is driven by the understanding that addressing environmental concerns can contribute to preventing, mitigating, and recovering from conflicts. So in this way, climate change is perceived as a conflict transformation and resolution tool instead of being seen as a conflict trigger. And environmental peacebuilding insists on the transformative potential of environmental cooperation and also challenges the theories of environmental or water wars that we can hear sometimes about the Fergana Valley. So in this sense, environmental peacebuilding is approached as you can see on the slide, the process through which environmental challenges shared by the former parties to a violent conflict are turned into opportunities to build lasting cooperation and peace. So the concept itself flourished in the 2010 and is nowadays more and more used in the literature, but also in practice. It encompasses 5 broad sets of activities that are mutually non-exclusive. I won't be detailing them because it would take too much time, but you can see them on the slide, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have on it. And so this approach of environmental peace building is based on a participatory approach in the way that it also follows grassroots or bottom-up peace building principles and focuses on the relationship between natural resources and human beings, but also on the cooperation that can emanate from these shared resources. When talking about the Fergana Valley specifically and seeing if it can be applicable in the valley itself, the literature and my experience on the field shows different things. The first thing is that one of the first approaches that has been implemented in the Fergana Valley is integrated water resources management. So it has been recognized as the most promising water management approach for achieving efficiency and equity in water sector, and by extension, also fostering peaceful relations between local water users. But according to the literature, this approach, the IWRM approach, does not seem to have had the desired effects in terms of solely peace building and conflict resolution, in the way that it appears to be sometimes too theoretical, abstract, and complex, to the extent that the gap between the expected results and claims and reality is too wide, which does not offer effective results for practical peace on the field. So in other words, IWRM alone is not suitable for peace building outcomes because it focuses only on water efficiency and does not interplay with other key sectors such as natural resources management by itself, agriculture, or even energy. So according to studies again, and to what I have seen on the field and from the different interviews I've conducted, environmental peace building is particularly well suited for contexts with high level of conflict and climate risk and low levels of regional cooperation. Some authors have also drawn a parallel with a Southeast Asian context, where they suggest that it is particularly well suited to address environmental and peace challenges in context where tensions are exaggerated by the rise of ethno-nationalistic populism, low climate change adaptation, NDRR, and water scarcity risk, which rings a bell when you compare Southeast Asian context and the Fergana Valley context. So one of the first results is that environmental peace building, which with this grassroots approach, bottom-up approach, could be a good entry point in the Fergana Valley. But we also have different obstacles. We have three main obstacles. One of the first one is institutionalization, which is one of the core mechanisms of environmental peace building. For example, the establishment of Water User Association represented a significant step forward in decentralizing water management in the valley. But these institutions remain quite fragile in certain parts of the sub-region. And more broadly, this example of Water User Association also reflects on the challenges that environmental peace building faces, in the way that in order to be sustainable on the long term, it has to be developed in institutional form of cooperation. And this is particularly difficult in highly top-down national political environments, such as Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, where little to no room is left for NGOs to act as facilitators between the highest and the grassroots level of society. A second challenge is the politicization, in the way that environmental change is deeply embedded into long-standing cleavages, unequal population, and persistent welfare gaps. And so accordingly, as conflict in the Fergana Valley do not solely rest on competition over natural resources, but is inscribed in a broader and more complex constellation of factors of conflict, the politicization can undermine environmental peace-building aims by itself. And the last challenge that we can have is the fact that all the sets that are considered as environmental peace-building activities, they remain largely dominated by rational choice and neoliberal conceptions of the biophysical environment and peace building. And so this aligns maybe more broadly with the overall criticism directed by several authors towards international aid agencies that are engaged in the Fergana Valley in conflict resolution processes. the main argument is that overreaching issues of lack of information and understanding on the local context by all these agencies had sometimes disastrous consequences in the development world. And environmental peace building also has this risk of harmful consequences during local applications if not everything is taken into account. So maybe to conclude quite quickly, environmental peace building can be a really relevant entry point when talking about conflicts related natural resources in the Fergana Valley, especially water. But as these conflicts are not caused only by resources, they still represent a significant component of the conflict dynamics in the valley. So in this way, peace building appears to offer the benefits of grassroots peace building approaches and also complementing IWRM approach that has been implemented since the 2000s, I guess. And so there's a growing recognition for peace building to move away from the sector by sector approach, meaning that we shouldn't look at peace building in the water sector, peace building in agriculture, etc., but actually towards a nexus that considers the interaction between water, food, and energy, and also takes into account the different synergies and trade-offs between the three. But we have to still keep in mind that we have some challenges, and applying today environmental peace building as itself in the Fergana Valley can be quite difficult, but will be possible and a good start. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you. That was a very rich presentation. So I suggest now that we start our, let's say, virtual roundtable. So please, from our participants, if you have any question, it can be maybe for clarification or maybe something a bit more about the content itself. Please feel free. Пожалуйста, уважаемые участники, вы можете задавать свои вопросы на любом языке, на русском, на английском, на французском. И мы, конечно, очень рады будем ответить.
May I ask first question to Yumi? My question, Yumi, for me, it's very interesting. Did you find any kind of social diversification in process of collecting this waste? Because we had in 90s, we had this specific people like a bamji who made all this kind of collection. But now, every day I can find that it is specific professionals who use electric mopeds, so they're very well equipped, etc. So I just interested what you find on this regard. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, I didn't focus on collectors. My research was much more about industrials while processing the plastic, but I saw different kind of collectors. Firstly, it depends on the region in Kyrgyzstan, because, for example, in Osh, I know that it's very linked with ethnicity, but I don't know much about that. And in Bishkek, yeah, it has been professionalized much more in the capital. And as I discussed with some wholesalers, for example, and I didn't discuss with the collectors, like street collectors, and so I cannot say a lot. But as I heard from wholesalers, there are different kinds. Like some people are just reselling some recyclable that they have in their shops, for example, or in their, for example, there is a sport house where you can do sport, and they can collect bottles. So there's bottles they can resell it to wholesalers. So it can be like inhabitants And it also can be a real profession, whole-time profession. But I know that a big part of them are also from migration population, but I don't have many further information on it. Yeah, it's actually what about collection and plastic collection, I was more focused on industrials who develop collection strategies. So it became a new profession in the inner new industrial companies. That means that industrial company has their own workers and collectors.
Yeah. I think it's just amazing, yeah, because all time we think that it should be kind of international input through development organizations to do it, but we see that in system when this plastic became asset, да, или как сказать, вот, so it's рынок сам регулирует, да, it's very interesting. And you also mentioned that it is a trans-border trade with plastic, yeah? So it's Kyrgyzstan selling to Uzbekistan, or
because it's cheaper. Like recycled plastic from Kyrgyzstan is cheaper than Uzbek's plastic, recycled plastic, or Kazakh ones. So, but it's cheaper because it's not a really good quality, and in the same times because the workers are cheaper, and there is not a lot of big amount of plastic, so yeah, it's cheaper. But it's like not really. It can be very far from Russia, for example, to bring it through Kazakhstan, so it can be maybe with bigger cost. But
thank you. And if no questions, I will ask Anastasia also a question. It's very nice to see you and see the progress with your study. Congratulations with this first, I don't know, no, this paper which you presenting. I just interesting with your research field trajectory. Have you, because as I understood, we have this approach very heavily in Kyrgyzstan and in Tajikistan. But what about Uzbekistan? I think what you find, does this approach also was implemented by development organizations in border regions in Fergana Valley?
Yeah, thank you, Asel. It's really nice to see you too. Thank you. So yeah, what I found in the literature is that environmental building itself is not really applied in the Fergana Valley in the way that it is not. It's either people focus on peace building or the environment. Both of them don't really go together, or people don't name it this way. They just talk about resources and say, if people work together on the resources, then they will also be peace, which is not exactly what environmental peace building is. When working on this topic, yes, I was focusing mainly on Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan because that's what we have in the literature, because that's where the latest conflict happened because of natural resources. To be honest, we don't have that many information on border areas between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, which I think is a shame because it's also like really interesting and a gap in the literature. But I think we could understand that in the way that we had less recent conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, or maybe less open conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan in terms of natural resources. One of the latest events I could think about is maybe the whole debate about Kimpirabat, but we cannot compare it in terms of violence, for example, to what happened between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. So for the moment, peace building is really an approach that focuses on avoiding open conflict. So I think that that's why we don't have much on Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan specifically.
Okay, thank you. Because it is a classical subject in literature about downstairs and
Downstream and upstream countries.
conflict. So I was just wondering, it is not purely, it's not straightforward linked to the border, but it's in positioning in hydrological system there. And it wasn't accompanied by any violence, but it was intergovernmental conflict.
Yeah. There's maybe I can draw a little bit more from my PhD research, but what you're describing here is what in theory we call hydrohegemony, in the way that if we look at the Sirdarya basin, we have Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, so the water flows from Kyrgyzstan into Uzbekistan. And so basically the theory states that Uzbekistan is the hydro-hegemon because it has more military power, better economic life, and more political influence in the region. But on the other side, Kyrgyzstan controls the flow of water, especially with the Toktogul reservoir. So this creates kind of like a balance of powers because neither of the two countries can attack symbolically or openly the other because of this kind of like balance in terms of respective powers. So yeah, it is not addressed in terms of peace building because it's more of a dynamic that is happening on the interstate and governmental level. And peace building tries to focus more on the community borders or more on the local level.
Yeah, I see.
Probably. So, does anyone have a question or okay? I just wanted to ask to Asel, I think you presented well the methodology, but I wanted to ask to Yumi and Anastasia which kind of issues they did face when, especially for interviews. How did you get to contact and actually to have people agree to talk with you about such issues? So recycling, I know it can be a bit of a touchy issue because it's also about money. It's also about the way the value chain is built. So I wanted to have your input, Yumi, on this. And Anastasia also, which kind of stakeholders were I don't know, eager to share more about the environmental peace building, knowing that it's, I mean, it's in one hand, it's development work, but also in the other hand, it is related to conflict and to some very sensitive issues.
Okay, thank you, Irène, for your question. Actually, it was sometimes it was struggling for my landfill, for my field work, sorry, for my field work. I had many interviews with many players at different stage of the plastic recycling process, but it wasn't not comfortable for me to develop my research around public, street collectors, which are mainly, poor people, and usually they couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Russian, so it was difficult for me to present myself with a translator with me. And so, and on the other hand, the industrial sector was quite interesting. And the industrial new sector of plastic recycling was very open to speak about their own involvement in ecology and environmental I don't know, protection or something like that. So there's two dynamics brings me into this question of what is the link between the discourse of ecology and the actual sectors of plastic recycling, which is quite industrial and linked to a globalization economy. So yeah, so I had of course, some issues, but it brings me to different other questions, quite interesting.
I'm going to try to answer to this question, Irène. Thank you. I think the way, what helped me mostly when approaching people to talk about peace building and especially environmental peace building and all these water-related issues that can also be seen as strategic, is that I conducted interviews specifically with people from NGOs, mainly from people from NGOs. So I won't name, but we had like some different levels, international organization, also local NGOs, like quite local Tajik and Kyrgyz NGOs. The thing that helped me is that before that, I had the chance to work in an NGO myself for a few months in Central Asia. So I still kept in touch with some people, or some people were able to reconnect me with someone else that could tell me more about this. So I think this was the main, my main entry point. And I think maybe in terms of methodology is also trying to find the balance between officially sending an email to a representative of a certain NGO and getting into contact through a WhatsApp message and just like this like kind of snowball informal effect that we can have in Central Asia. So it's kind of like drawing the line between the two and kind of like finding a balance between these. And in terms of stakeholders, it was mainly from NGOs because research is being done on this, but in Central Asia specifically, there's only, I guess, one report that has been published. And the rest of it is just that people that are on the field working in this approach. So these are the main stakeholders that I've met with. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting because all the research which was presented is somehow pretty much connected with either existing development intervention, either potential development work, right? So even in the case of plastic recycling, as Yumi mentioned, there is also UNDP working in this field. Well, Tajikistan is also a country where there is a lot of intervention. And so for me, the question is always to think how we can create this link between what we are doing, our research, academic interest, and also what some development organizations, the kind of information that they look for. And so there is somehow this disconnection, or sometimes disconnection and sometimes connection between first the rhythm, the way research works with its very specific pace, which is rather slow if you compare it with intervention work, and also the way to connect the interest so that research is not solely instrumentalized for development, but can still enrich, give some, I don't know, in-depth information for work in the field. So I don't know, maybe you have some, I don't know, ideas, some things to share. And of course, I think about Asel, who has been working intensively with different organizations, but like, please feel free to...
Мне кажется, еще у нас был вопрос от Рэйчел, да, или это было случайно?
Я не видела, я прошу прощения, я не видела вопрос Рэйчел.
Да, была поднята рука. Может быть, если Рэйчел еще не получила ответ на свой вопрос, может быть, соберем вопросы.
Рэйчел, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentations. I had a question for Anastasia about, I was interested to hear more about your fieldwork, which you differentiated in your methodology section from the interviews. And I was wondering where your fieldwork was. Was it at the company, the NGO that you worked at, or was it somewhere else? And how did you build the relationships with the people there that you were doing your fieldwork with, as opposed to the interviews with the people at the NGOs? Thank you.
Irène, do you want to gather like different questions and then we can answer, or do you want me to dive in? Okay.
No, please answer this question and then we will go like that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rachel, for your question. I'm going to try to answer in a kind of like to give you a complete answer, but while kind of protecting the people I work with, because these are strategic questions. I have done my master's degree. So at the end of my master's degree, I completed an internship within one of a Central Asian NGO. So I was working on the field, and I was working specifically on the natural resources management project in the Fergana Valley, which was my main entry point to what is the Fergana Valley, what's the development sector, what's environment peacebuilding in the Fergana Valley. Then after that, I started a PhD in geography, and then I went to the Fergana Valley again, but as myself, as a researcher by itself, not anymore as an NGO representative. And why I made a difference between semi-structured interviewed and fieldwork is because I see that there's a difference in methodology. In terms of semi-structured interview is just me presenting myself as a researcher, saying, I'm doing a PhD on this topic, I'm doing this, that, and that, and I have these following questions I want to ask you. In terms of fieldwork, yes, going to the field and doing this semi-structured interview is also considered fieldwork, or at least I consider this fieldwork. But I also feel that the fieldwork that I did when working at the Central Asian NGO was kind of a participatory approach and observation, an immersive observation within the Central Asian NGOs, specifically in terms of peacebuilding, environmental peacebuilding within the Fergana Valley. I hope I answered your question. I feel like you had maybe another question about where specifically maybe in the Fergana Valley I was, or not specifically, maybe more about the stakeholders, or did I answer completely?
No, that's fine. Yeah, you answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask you, Rachel, just to give a few words about you so that we know who you are?
So I'm also a PhD student, and I'm currently carrying out research in Central Asia, in Jalalabad region in Kyrgyzstan, working on the walnut forests and walnut trade and the interplay between working lives and ecological change.
Thank you.
Мне кажется, что можно уже на ваш вопрос отвечать по поводу, да, разрыва между академическими исследованиями и программами развития. Мне кажется, что это веками созданный барьер, да, когда development начался, и да. Ну, в общем, мне кажется, что это требует просто мне кажется, от современных исследователей требуется больше, чем от них требовалось, не знаю, даже 10 лет тому назад. Потому что сейчас, например, outreaching is one of the crucial part of your professional skills. То есть если ты просто делаешь исследования и публикуешь их в каких-то академических журналах, и какой импакт ты делаешь для сообщества, если ты это заявляешь у себя в пейперах, да, или вообще, если у тебя такая research-философия. Поэтому, мне кажется, сейчас тоже академическая наука становится более сенситивной к этим запросам. И, например, есть такой evaluation, например, вот мы сейчас в университете ведем такую дискуссию, что в нашем ежегодном professional evaluation будет включен такой тип научного производства, как non-traditional research outputs, за которые мы не получаем цитирования, но которые помогают нам распространять наши знания, делиться нашими... Не то, чтобы мне, когда говорят распространяется знание, мне кажется, здесь какая-то есть иерархия. Я вообще все больше и больше убеждаюсь, что мы знаем очень мало. Вот, скорее всего, вот как-то вовлекаться и быть более открытыми к дискуссиям, к общественным дискуссиям, к различного формата планированию и так далее, потому что очень легко взять себе одну сторону и говорить, вот мы не ввязываемся в это там не очень профессионально, да, там или еще что-то, или там это не подходит моей исследовательской философии. Но, с другой стороны, тоже как бы пассивная позиция, мне кажется, это имеется в виду пассивная в плане того, что ты берешь только чисто академическую стезю и только по ней идешь, она тоже проигрышная, потому что сейчас общественные запросы к науке и научные запросы, они очень интегрированы. Уже сейчас невозможно что-то так разделить. И плюс это очень требует еще открытости к трансдисциплинарности. Вот я недавно закончила статью в соавторстве с специалистом совершенно с другого филда, и это была боль, конечно, вообще трансдисциплинарное исследование, это очень больно в плане того, что это нужно, конечно, реально быть открытыми к этому. Если ты не открыт, и очень ты защищаешь свои дисциплинарные границы и не гибок в своем аналитическом аппарате, то это сложно, чтобы это случилось. Вот. Поэтому мне кажется, что да, этот link between academical research and development, it's very, it could hurt people that, but it should happen. And finally, it's also depend from us who try to raise our voice in such global discussions. As Anastasia already mentioned, it's most of the not only peace building approaches, but many of approaches, development approaches in Central Asia, very top down, and yes, it's related to all kinds of sectors. So, and I think here we need to think about our positionality and also engage in these kind of discussions with very strong criticism. And from my personal experience, sometimes it could give very fruitful results. It also depends from people, but sometimes it's work, yeah.
Yeah, and also I would just like to add something that на самом деле это тоже очень затратно, да, и для самых исследователей, а также для организаций, которые готовы с ними сотрудничать, потому что это от них тоже требует такая же гибкость, чтобы вовлечь, чтобы понять и чтобы, ну, это начинать что-то вместе делать. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just mixing languages, but I just wanted to also to highlight that this transdisciplinary, as we call it, so it's between research stakeholders and non-research stakeholders. It's also very costly, and it's costly for everyone, for research, but also for development organizations, because they also need to do this effort to understand the methodology and the way research works. So yeah, that was just a very small input from my side. Bermet, please go ahead.
If I may add, I'm actually from UNDP in Kyrgyz Republic, and what you are how to like sharing it. This is really a burning issue in a good sense. Yeah, if we can have this synergy or this collaboration, yeah, or this how to say joint partnership. Why? Working in the gender equality sector, for it's just, and I'm sharing maybe the views and points that were discussed among our colleagues here, for example, from UN Women, GTG, Gender Thematic Group. So every time, whenever there is a need for Kyrgyzstan to develop national strategy of gender equality, yeah, then national action plans, and monitoring and evaluation every time. So we come to this point that, in fact, this part of the job, work could be or should be carried, by researchers from the local academies, and it will be like our students. They will have this, as we say, связь с землей, having this connection, with the ground, why it's in this way, so then how it should be resolved, because every time it is done by gender experts, and the knowledge it's every time with the gender experts, because they are just taking, like money, their fees, and that's it. So as a solution, as a suggestion, I think it was UN Women who was now thinking of having this, connection with academia, especially with the master's programs, with those whose thesis about gender equality, or women's rights, empowerment, inequality, to have this connection. Maybe these students and these academic minds interested in gender issues, for example, can be engaged, but also with the participation of state gender machinery, Minister of Labor, Social Security and Protection. So my belief that there should be definitely strong, healthy connection for the sake of, like people, and there should be dialogue. These days, any of our concept notes for any event, for any activity, now we put academies every time. Even for this recent Central Asian Women Leaders Dialogue, which we conducted last week, we have invited academies as well, that they will also have this connection with the practitioners. So I hope that this, as a result of this Life in Kyrgyzstan, platform conference, something viable, will be also discussed and come as an outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bermet. I think here you highlighted a very important question. Is also so when we talk about the link between research and development organization, we should also ask which researchers. Yes, so it's not like one very big group which is homogeneous and so on, but it's also the question, as you underline, the question of the local academic system and how we can support and benefit from them for the as you said, for development work. And I mean, I'm quite sure it's an interest that many of us share today. And at the same time, it's not easy. For instance, for gender, I would be very interested in knowing who, I mean, which university, which master degree is actually working in this thematic in Kyrgyzstan. Because if I take my country, for instance, in France, gender, I mean, it's very difficult to find a master degree which has this specialization on gender. So
just quickly, because Irène, we have master's degree students coming with their thesis, because gender inequality is one of the urgent issues, as we see from the media and etc. every time about GBV case and etc. So this how to say this giving us signal, that that there are students interested in this because they're approaching and having these interviews and data. So this kind of things. Thank you.
Please, if we still have time for a few questions, if there are some.
Yeah,
or for some remarks. Yeah, please, Yumi, please go ahead.
Just would like to add something on what you said about creating links between academics, and more. I would like to add creating links between academics and public instances, public infrastructures, like states or ministry, especially because when we are talking about creating knowledge and research, and it's really important to have a critical point of view and to present it to the public forces of public states. Like, for example, talking about recycling plastic is a very new market, and it doesn't have a legal framework really clear, actually. So it's in a way to be built, but actually today the main interlocutor of the states, and especially of the ministry, who are also learning about this subject, is Coca-Cola Foundation through WasteNet mainly, but through Coca-Cola Foundation, which is a quite big actor and who has bias on this item. So when they bring specialists about waste management from their own network, it's hard to present maybe other kind of research or results about on critical results. I mean about this industrial sector, which is quite important in the country and quite new. So it's very important to develop knowledge, but also to create links between I would say ministry mainly, but also all the people who are creating the legal framework of the sector linked to. So yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think it's also a very important issue, question, to keep all the stakeholders around the table, or maybe not around the table, but at least to find different ways to reach out to different stakeholders. So it means not only development organizations, but also, as you did, with private stakeholders, and of course with public ones, because they're also very important. I mean, they're crucial. Well, I think that research has quite a lot on its plate. There is quite this is of course a lot of work, but I'm happy to see that there is so much work ongoing. We reached the end of the allocated time. If there is one more question which is really burning your lips, please don't be shy, ask. Otherwise, I'm quite sure you can find the contact details of all the presenters who presented today. I wanted to thank everyone for their attention. Of course, I wanted to say thanks to the presentators for the very interesting presentations, very rich, insightful. And of course, the organizers, Saule and all the team of Life in Kyrgyzstan. And well, for those who are in Bishkek, we might see each other for the next few days. And for the others, well,